In the Cold War era, strange lights in the sky weren't just a mystery. They were a potential threat. In response, the Air Force formed Project Blue Book, a top-secret program tasked with probing the escalating flood of UFO reports. The operation's mission was to determine if UFOs posed a threat to humans and the United States national security. But in the summer of 1955, an alleged sighting on a quiet farm in Kelly, Kentucky, would push that mission to its limits.
What's reported to have happened at this tiny tobacco farm in Kelly, Kentucky, is considered one of the most significant and well-documented UFO encounters in history.
The case goes on to introduce the idea of little green men to popular culture. And according to director Steven Spielberg, it even inspires his blockbuster film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But for the family who lives through it, this was no work of fiction, and the fear never left them.
This encounter belongs to my dad, my grandmother, and several aunts and uncles that were in the house that night in Kelly, Kentucky in 1955. I found out about it when I was 8 years old. Over the years, if you got any of them to talk, the story never changed. I mean, this is something that very few people have happened to them in their lifetime, and it will go down as history. This happened on my grandmother's small farm. She owned about 27 acres. It was just a regular Sunday evening, and it just so happened my dad, his first wife, and their friends, Billy Ray and June Taylor, came in for the weekend. They sat down to eat, and Billy Ray decides to go out to the well to get some water. So he's out there in the well, which is in the front yard. As he's standing there, he hears something, looks up toward where he hears this sound, and there's this silver, oval-shaped object with what he calls the colors of the rainbow flowing behind it. And he says it was only like 30 to 40 foot above him. Scared him.
It's at this point, Geraldine says that Billy Ray runs back to the house in fear, begging her dad to come outside to investigate.
So they head back out to the well. Lo and behold, out from the back of the woods behind the house comes this little 3.5 foot tall figure. Big round head, arms down to the ground with very long talons. They were gray, but they glowed a luminescent glow, a greenish glow, and it's floating above the ground. The legs aren't moving. They were scared to death. So they both ran into the house, slammed the door, and they're trying to explain what they just saw.
Geraldine says at this point, her grandmother goes outside to check for herself.
All of a sudden, she screams. Everybody hears. They come out there, and she tells them, says, "I saw it. There is something out here." About that time, they hear a shot ring out in the front of the house.
Geraldine says this is when her uncle shot one of the beings through the front window.
Dad runs out there. Somebody screams, "There's one in the tree." Turns around. Sure enough, in the big maple tree, there's set one on the limb. Shoots it. It floats to the ground, rolls, scurries off into the brush. These things were not dropping at all. So they run in the house. But they are coming up to the doors and windows. So they were shooting these things through the screens. They were trapped in this house, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't have a radio or any other communication. They have no phone. My dad finally tells them, the only thing we can do is try to get to Hopkinsville, which was 7 miles from their house, and get to the police and see if we can get help. It gets quiet. So he's thinking, let's go. They pull up and they run into the police department. One little officer on duty, and they're all trying to tell this crazy story. So he calls up Chief Russell Greenwell. The chief tells him, get a hold of Fort Campbell Army Base, get a hold of the paper, call every state trooper you can find. By the time it's all said and done, they've got about 25 people heading out to Kelly in the middle of the night. The police get there. They get out of their vehicles. There's shotgun and rifle shells all over the yard. Shotgun and rifle shells inside the house. Woodwork and screens are shot up inside the house. They searched and searched. No bodies, no blood, no kind of fur or feathers or anything saying it was any kind of animal. So Chief goes up to my grandmother and says, Miss Glennie, I am so sorry, but there's nothing here. There's nothing we can do. So they all left.
Geraldine says the next morning, her father swears the family to secrecy, hoping to shield them from public ridicule. Their story might have ended there, if not for what happened next.
All of a sudden, my grandmother heard this commotion out in the front yard. There's car after vehicle pulling up in their driveway, pulling up down the road, jumping out, putting up tents, putting up tables. Word had gotten out. It was everywhere. Everybody was coming because they were wanting to see the little men. It was big news.
Put down as the top story of the community in 1955.
In the home of Cecil Lucky Sutton.
All right, now let's go back to the beginning here now. You said a spaceship landed.
It spread like wildfire. Bud Ledwith came in, and he was the engineer that worked at the local radio station there in Hopkinsville. He wanted a story, so he went in there to interview everybody, and he set them down off in a room by themselves, individually, got them to tell their story, and he was like blown away because everybody's story, it was the same. And what really blew him away was the drawings. My grandmother, Billy Ray, my dad, he sat down with every one of them, and hardly any differences about any of them. That's where you get the infamous drawings to this day. Later on, it was reported that the evening that the encounter happened, there were state troopers that actually seen lights they couldn't explain. And so, yeah, there were other people seeing and hearing things that evening.
In the days after the alleged encounter, the U.S. Air Force, including their classified UFO research unit, Project Blue Book, reviews the state police findings.
They searched the grounds. They had aircraft in the air that morning after and the next day.
The results are inconclusive. No proof of visitors, but also no evidence of a hoax. The case is left officially unresolved.
2 weeks after this event happened, my grandmother sold the farm. She was scared to death. Is it hard to believe things like this can happen? Yes. But my family knows the truth. Something happened in Kelly, Kentucky, August 21st, 1955, there's no doubt.
The little green men of Kelly, Kentucky were seen once and never again. But 2 decades later, in Arizona, come stories of unidentified aircraft returning again and again.
Among the state's reports of UFOs, there was one case that would capture the world's attention. According to other members of the 6-man logging crew, on November 5th, 1975, Travis Walton disappeared shortly after he was struck in the chest by a beam of light, which they said lifted him off the ground like a rag doll.
Travis's disappearance kicks off the largest manhunt in Arizona history. But they find nothing. No footprints, no clothes, no blood, nothing. Then, 5 days later, and 15 miles from where he vanished, he suddenly emerges, and he says, they're still out there.